I'm Celine Williams, and welcome to the Leading Through Crisis podcast, a conversation series exploring resiliency and leadership in challenging times. My guest today is Mike Shoreman, who is an author, speaker, athlete, and advocate, and an entrepreneur. Mike, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to connect with you again, Celine.
Absolutely. I'm very grateful that we get to have multiple conversations on multiple platforms in multiple ways. This is what it's all about.
Very exciting.
So, I always start with this question. It's like, I feel like I'm just going to make it my official first question now, which is, I know it's big and broad, but when you hear the name of this podcast is Leading Through Crisis, and when you hear the concept or you hear that language, leading through crisis, I'm curious what that means to you or what comes up for you inside of that.
So I think for me, when I hear that question, what comes up is stepping up and being the face of change, doing the things that are seemingly impossible or insurmountable, and showing others that they can do the same, and encouraging others to do so.
I love that stepping up was where you started. I think that's really powerful. And I think that it's really relevant because it does start with us, right? Like it starts with us stepping up.
It does. No, we have to make decisions as entrepreneurs, as business people, as leaders to either follow the pack or to do the big things. And sometimes that can be really scary, and it can be daunting, and it can be stressful. But when we're put into crisis situations, we're all going through something right now, with this pandemic, and it's created opportunity for leaders to really come out and be noticed. So through crisis, there is always opportunity, and you can either take it and you can run with it, or you can be left behind and not be one of those leaders anymore.
Well, and that's kind of that's what's so great about the idea of stepping up is that, like, if you as an individual, and everyone is a leader, like I feel like I repeat this all the time, but we are all leaders. We all have influence. We can all exert it in positive ways or not. But when we step into that and we acknowledge that, like, there is something we can do and there will be opportunity, even if we don't know what it is right now, because it's not about certainty, right? And we often we really want certainty, so we think that's what it's about, but it's not. But there will be opportunity. We don't know what it is necessarily, but what is the step we can take? How can we step into it? That's a really powerful place to come from.
No, of course. No, for with my experience, I went from being a coach in sport, a professional stand-up paddleboarding coach, to losing my mobility, and my face collapsed, and I lost my business, and I lost relationships and my independence, and for a long time I was building a road that I didn't know where it was going, and I didn't know what would be there on the other side of it. And here I am, almost 2 years later, stepping into it now, which is exciting. And that's come through, that has come through really with what we're going through with this pandemic. It's created an opportunity for that.
So I'm curious if you're willing to share a little bit of your story with us, because even in what you've just said, those, a professional athlete, professional coach, to not losing your independence, losing relationships, losing your business. Can you tell us, because that is, to me, that sounds like a series of crises, not just a single crisis, but you actually experienced a series of crises and clearly were able to lead yourself, whatever you want to call it, through that situation. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience because I think often when we tell our stories, it's when people can connect and learn because it's not
Mhm.
only theoretical.
So I think at the core of what happened, I got very sick, and and I lost my mobility, and essentially, I was a first time business owner. I didn't have my systems in place like I should have, which would have kept the business. And ultimately I lost it. And there have been lessons learned from that as I've now pivoted into a role as an author, a speaker, entrepreneur. Um, but when it all happened, um, you know, at the core of it, there was an identity crisis because my identity was held in what I did, and it was blown apart. And it ultimately led to me having a mental health breakdown. Um, so after months and months of grief and anger and sadness, I sought mental health treatment. Um, and and that really opened the door to what I do now. I'm a columnist you know with the Toronto Sun, with some news media outlets. I write about mental health. I speak about mental health. It helps me pivot into a new career, which I didn't see coming. Um, but ultimately, like I didn't believe in myself
Mm,
because the confidence was taken away. But there was a little bit there from the initial wins that I was getting that allowed me to believe in other people's belief in me.
mm.
So I latched onto that and I took it. Um, and and here we are. So
Um, so there's two things in there that I think are really, thank you for sharing that. There's two things in there that I think are really powerful that I want to touch on. And the first one is this idea of losing your identity of who you are. That identity that's an identity crisis, right? So I think that's really powerful. I want to talk about that. And the other thing I want to touch on is that idea of confidence. Um, and so I'm going to start with the identity crisis. I'm just going to call out the two things I want to talk
yep,
about so I don't
okay,
forget them.
let's do it.
How we do it. Um, so that I think that I don't think we often talk about the crisis that comes when we lose our identity in some way. And it comes in different ways. Like I've spoken about this with clients and friends, maybe not here, but both of my parents are dead. And when you lose the identity of being someone's child because those people don't exist, it's a weird identity shift. Because, like, sure, I had parents, but I don't belong to anyone anymore, right? So
Yeah.
there's that. It's not the same thing, but it is like I appreciate yours was much more dramatic and but it's
Oh, I don't discount what that.
but it is I appreciate that, but it is that shift of like, oh, I've lost that identity in some way because that just isn't real.
Mm,
And
mhm.
I want to talk about your experience of that identity crisis and how you navigated through it because I think we all do it differently when we
Yeah.
experience something like that. And I don't hear that spoken about a lot, right? I
Yeah.
don't hear us talk about the reality of when we have a crisis of identity, how we navigate it and what that looks like. Because like, my experience was that it is messy in many ways, and there is another side to it. And it's also a process, and it's always ongoing.
Yeah. No. Um, no, I remember, looking in the mirror and I couldn't recognize, like, my face was sunken in, it had collapsed on the one side. I could barely walk. I was being sent for MRIs to rule out brain damage. People were telling me you're never gonna be on the water coaching paddleboarding ever again. I was, having conversations about announcing to my network, that, the business is done. It was very difficult. And what saved me in the end was, reaching out to other leaders, who had also been through what I was experiencing. So, you know, I reached out to influencers who are also entrepreneurs, who are also in fitness. Tony Horton, the founder of P90X, he became my mentor. Um, I contacted him, and we developed this relationship and friendship, and he helped me through that. I think it's very hard to go through something on your own and figure everything out. One, it's going to be exhausting. And two, you know, when you're in a place where you're already feeling extremely defeated, uh, it's not a good place to be. Um, so I contacted, people who were influential. Um, I set up a series of mentorships in that time, and also with an identity crisis, I sought quite a bit of mental health treatment. Um, I had a therapist, I had, um, you know, a mental health support worker. Also, I felt like I was having, double therapy at the time, which was a lot. But I think actually entrepreneurs could have double therapy all the
Mhm,
time. There's a lot
mhm.
that comes up for us. Um, but no, it took a long time. It took about 8 months to really come out of that mental place of feeling the loss, um, and realizing, with the encouragement of others, that this isn't the end of the road, and that now, there can be a pivot and a shift, into a new profession, that actually could be, much more lucrative, much more, um, satisfying, just as good, different, but just as good.
So, I love that part of your process of working through, like, a crisis of identity, of who you are, was actually leaning on a community and reaching out to people around you. And I think that's really important to emphasize, because I think that listen, I am a person who my default is that I can figure anything out, and I'm very independent, and I'm going to sort it out on my own. And that's not always possible. And having a community and a support system matters. And I think it's sometimes counterintuitive for people to think, oh, when I'm going through my own thing, it's an identity crisis, whatever that is, or I'm not sure who I am.
Yeah,
We tend to go very internal
we do.
and not external. And I love that and I'm not saying you didn't go internal as well, but I love that you are also very intentionally looking outside yourself.
Yeah, no. I think there is there's a huge power in community. I gave, a really big talk on the power of community and what that can do for a person. Um, last year it was, with Speaker Slam, and what that can do, um, for a person, and also what it does for the communities themselves. It might be very difficult for people experiencing something like this to reach out and to contact these people, but at the end of the day, people want to feel like they are helping.
Yeah.
Um, and that's, there's no harm in contacting and say, I'm going through this. You've experienced this. What can you tell me? What can you guide me with? Um, Thank you. I'd be so appreciative. Um, and and it really does make a huge difference.
I think we're often our egos get so caught up in if I don't get an answer or someone says no, that there's something wrong with me, as opposed to just saying like setting the expectation that you're going to reach out to people and some people are just not going to answer. They may not see it. You might get a no, but that doesn't matter because the more
Yeah,
people you reach out to, the more no's you get, the more yeses you're also going to get.
absolutely, absolutely.
And that's a hard thing for our, egos to wrap their little minds around.
Yeah, yeah, no. So to segue into the confidence,
Yeah.
so right now I am, like, what I'm doing, but I don't think your audience knows
No,
what
tell us.
I'm doing.
Tell them. Tell
So
me again.
so this summer, because of where I went, I became a mental health advocate, and an ambassador for Canada's #1 youth mental health program. And I did an event to raise money for them last year, and I raised several $1,000s. But there was a huge dip in every organization around the world last year. With you know every organization took a huge hit financially. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, how can we raise a significant amount of money and attention towards this cause for Jack.org? And I thought, well, I can become the first person with a disability to cross international waters from one country to another, in a 3-day event from the USA to Canada. Um, that would raise a lot of money. Like, that would, that's international headlines going towards them. That's media coverage for them. That's, a lot of money. And so part of that is, right now, my project for the last few months has been contacting corporate Canada and asking them to come on board as corporate donors. So I have been contacting, the banks, insurers, the top law firms, the top mining companies, Canada's top favorite brands, even brands that are in Canada that are American brands, because, if basically what I've presented is a marketing opportunity for businesses to position themselves on the landing page and through marketing of this as mental health leaders.
Yep.
Um, so, last week was very exciting. Canadian Tire and Sport Check came on board. And, this week I've got conversations with, Mercedes Benz and Audi, and I had a conversation with DeFasco this morning, who's, brilliant. They said, yeah, for sure, send us your stuff. I think, mental health is a huge, it's on trend this year, with what's going on. And companies want to, corporate social responsibility and marketing and all that. But, you know, when I was going through what we were just talking about, the confidence to approach these big companies, these big corporations, that wasn't there. And that came with a series of win building that happened throughout the entire process. And now I'm having conversations with the VP of marketing for, BMW. But that took a long time and not a long time at the same time. But I talk about win building and how we do it. And we get a small win, and then we leverage that within, um and it builds confidence, and then we go after a little bit more. and a little bit more until one day, you're having conversations with, um, Barrick Gold Mining and, Gowling and WLPLG.
So I love that, and I appreciate what you're saying. I talk with clients all the time about the importance of we don't get so we often think that we have to have confidence to start something. And the truth is that you have to build momentum to get confidence. And so we often approach things from the wrong listen, I don't believe in right or wrong, but we often approach things from the less effective lens of when I have the confidence, I will do that thing,
Yeah,
as opposed to what is the small step I can take today that will build momentum towards the thing, knowing that at some
yeah,
point you'll be like, "Oh, hey, I'm doing it. Like I got the
yeah,
confidence to do this thing." And so I love that I love that concept of like building these small wins and creating these small wins because it is building momentum. That's exactly what you've done to be in the position that you're. And I love that you took it to where I wanted to go. So thank you, Mike, for being in my brain. Fully
yeah.
appreciate it. But I think that's really important because especially when we're faced with the unknown and challenging things,
Mhm.
we get stuck in, well, I don't know. I don't have the confidence. I don't know what it's going to be, so we stop doing anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when you stop, um, nothing comes from that. So, in my journey, um, I got back on a board when they said it wasn't possible. That gave me the confidence, just for a few minutes, that gave me the confidence to do it for 5 minutes and then for seven. And then I stood up. And that gave me the confidence to enter North America's largest inspirational speech competition, Speaker Slam. And then I won that. And then that generated millions of views around the world and a worldwide movement, which led to me becoming the 2021 International Stand Up Paddleboarding Man of the Year. And then because of that, I now have a nomination in to be inducted into the Canadian Disability Hall of Fame this year. So now, when I'm approaching all of these companies, I basically put the plane on the runway for them to be mental health leaders because I've kind of presented a marketing opportunity with brand visibility that they would have a hard time turning down. But when I was getting back on the paddleboard, I didn't have the confidence to do what I'm doing now. I was just trying not to spin out and get dizzy and fall in the water.
Yeah.
When I took the stage at Speaker Slam, I had no idea what that was going to do. And it's, the little wins kept on adding up and building the momentum, as you just said. And here we are, doing, having here we are having conversations with, VP of marketing for Canadian Tire and directors of the top, you know, companies across Canada. It's a crazy place to be. Um, but it's all through momentum gained through, incremental wins.
Yeah. And imagine what's going to come next after this. Like
Oh,
it
I'm gonna run for like premier or something. I don't know.
Great. I mean, we need to get rid of the one we have right now. So let's
Yeah,
I'm in.
yeah, yeah.
um so I am there your journey is so fascinating and there's so many things that so many places we could go and I'm really curious. So people who listen to this generally identify in some way as a leader, whether they are officially they've been given the title of leader in some way or they identify it. That all humans should do this, by the way. This is my I'm gonna keep pushing my everyone's a leader mantra, but I believe that. um what advice would you have for leaders as we continue to navigate the different versions of crises and change and challenge that we are facing and that they are facing.
So, I people watch always. And I think that goes back to, that was before I was an entrepreneur. That was, just, I've always found people fascinating. Um, I always, when I'm at a conference or whether, I'm at a party, I love asking questions. And, people, you know, what people find, people love talking about themselves. So, so when I'm at a conference or at a party or something, I ask a lot of questions. If there's like a circle and I can scope out, okay, that's so and so from this organization. I know that face. I go to wherever that small crowd is and I get in there and I ask them questions and I make it all about them because they want to. People open up. People want to talk about themselves, and I study them. I study other leaders, and I ask them a lot of questions, and I learn from them. We're always learning, and you know, those who are the best leaders are the ones who continue to learn always. So I would say surround yourself in networks in communities with other leaders and ask questions. Um, do your homework on, people watch, study, watch their social media, um, you know, watch what they're doing. And take note of that. Because one, it's incredibly inspiring to watch other people grow. And two, you can take bits and pieces of what they're doing and you can apply that to whatever it is you're building.
Yeah. When I used to work with a lot of startups, I would often, the and I still mentor startups, and it's always who else is doing this? What can we copy from what they're doing? What can we And I'm always like, look to what other people are doing and use it to inspire you to do your own thing.
Yeah.
So, it's not about copying,
Yeah.
it's not and I
Don't copy.
and
You can take bits and pieces
yeah,
that are working,
yes.
but don't. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I wanna be clear, I'm not saying that I fully appreciate that you are not saying copy, I'm just emphasizing the fact that, like, inspiration is really important,
Yeah.
and looking at what other people are doing, and not comparing, because that's the other thing that we tend to do, is we'll look and we compare.
Parasitis.
Yes, comparison is it's the worst, let's stop doing that, right? But look and go, "Oh, Mike is doing all these amazing story." Listen, Mike, if you follow Mike on Facebook, Mike is like the Facebook story genius. He's constantly posting stories. So I'm going to use you as my example. Like Mike is doing all these stories. He's sharing this. This is inspiring. This is exciting. What can I share that might be inspiring to someone else? Like use what you, Mike, are doing to inspire me to do something that is my own version of what I'm getting from yours. That's one of the wonderful things about surrounding yourself with people, whether it's social media or real life, who are who are leading in some ways, is to find that inspiration and I think what you said is really powerful, that like people who are learning and growing, it's exciting to be around them.
No, yeah, no, one of your previous guests, Giovanni Marsico, um, I do my homework. I watch your podcast. I know who you have. Um, you know, he's one of the most inspiring, hardworking, talented, creative individuals I've ever met. Um, I feel very fortunate that he actually wrote a review published in my book. Um, you know, I surround myself with the people that inspire me. Um, and I, I watch them grow, and and I learn from them. And it's I think it's incredibly valuable to build networks of change makers and thought leaders and inspiring individuals, and you know become part of their networks, and no, I very much agree with that.
Yeah. I think it's a powerful thing. The quote that I always say, it's obnoxious because I use it all the time whenever I'm interviewed, is I always say that I'm more committed to my own growth than I am my own comfort. Like I'm more committed to my growth than I am my own comfort because I think that, which is not to say that growth is always uncomfortable, but growth is usually, there's a little bit of discomfort
Right?
inside of growing and learning because if you're doing it effectively, you're questioning and you're unlearning, and that is not a it's not hard, but it's not always a comfortable process.
No, it can not only be not comfortable, it can be scary,
Yes.
because you are questioning everything, and you're thinking, okay, like, am I am I doing this right? Because I've never done it before. um, no,
Yeah.
yeah, no, growth can be a very scary, challenging, uncomfortable thing, but it is meant to be that way.
Yep.
Um, and and it's a good thing. I think, it pulls us, you know, it sends us in a new direction, and that's how we scale and build and grow and do the amazing things.
Yeah. I could not agree with you more, and it kinda takes me back to when you were talking about, like an identity crisis of who you were in the moment. That's a huge it's a huge growth opportunity, and it is all of those things, right? It is all of those, you questioning, "Who am I, and what actually
Yeah,
matters to me, and what am I capable of, and what does this mean?" And all of that is that scary,
yeah,
uncomfortable,
yeah,
but full of opportunity place.
yeah. No, forces it stops you in your tracks, and it actually, you know, very similar to what this pandemic has presented. It has, forced time to slow down for a period for us to really make conscious changes and think about what is important, what do we value, where do we want to go, who do we want to surround ourselves with, and what at the core, you know what do we want to stand for?
Yeah,
um, important questions come up in crisis,
yeah,
um, and and if we're open to it, we can make important decisions.
yeah. I could not agree with more. Um, I adore you. Thank you for coming on my show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Everyone should get Mike's book. It's called Crash and Rise, and
It'll
is
make you all rise.
it'll make you all rise. Where can people find you online? I know all your social media is The Unbalanced Paddleboarder.
Yep. So people can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Um,
Mike is everywhere is the lesson we're learning here.
I'm everywhere. Um, Soon to be on, I'm talking with um, my digital marketing team. We're getting me on the TikTok.
Thank
Um,
you.
prior to, yeah, that's scary change for me.
Yep,
That's a new platform. But ahead of this, big USA to Canada thing, you know, TikTok's an important vehicle,
yep.
so I'll be on there soon. But no, you can find me at mikeshoreman.org. That's the website, or on any social media platform. The book is available on Amazon, Crash and Rise, Diaries of the Unbalanced Paddleboarder, or in Indigo and Barnes and Noble stores.
So we will have links to all of this in the show notes, but in case someone is driving and listening or whatever, they can find it this way. Thank you for coming on and chatting with us, Mike. It's always a pleasure. Truly, I think
So much
you're
fun.
doing wonderful things in the world, and I cannot wait to follow your journey across Lake Ontario.
Thanks, Celine. Have a great day.
You do. Thanks for joining me today on the Leading Through Crisis podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a minute to rate and review us on your podcast app. If you're interested in learning more about any of our guests, you can find us online at www.leadingthroughcrisis.ca.